Your hosts are The Great Order and No White Guilt. And this is the one and only after party, and it is our Thanksgiving special, folks. The crown winner of last week and the only financial contributor of last week is Mrs. Jess Horse, financially gifting $25. God bless you. Thank you so much. And congratulations for being the crown winner. Financially gift, folks, on Entropy, which will be up running in a moment. You'll also be able to ask your questions and post your comments about the Big Turkey Day yesterday over there. You may financially gift over on Cash App as well. The URLs for both are in the description below. Today, we have a team of wondrous people on tap for this Happy Thanksgiving special. And a big happy Thanksgiving to you, Mr. George. Sir, please take it away.
Hello, hello. How is everybody? It's good to see you. And we have some friends joining us. I feel like we just did this for Halloween, a multi-guest special. It was only about a month ago.
Yeah.
And went a little quickly. But everything is very good here, and sending my love to all of you and your families and friends and loved ones. So you know how these things go. It's a cozy stream, nice, comfortable hangout, and we're catching up with guests and kind of just free floating, seeing where things will take us in the conversation. But everyone feel free to say hello in the chat and ask any questions, get any comments in as well. But we have a treat to begin with. Our friend Loralee is back. It's been a little while since we've spoken to an old friend of the show. And if you don't know her work, she's done, it's still in progress or in process, but a lot of it's been completed already. This wonderful series, very high production value, breaking down Lord of the Rings as a meta myth for our time, and breaking down, even if you don't know the story too well, we know the story, but Jason and I hadn't seen all of the movies, or we weren't brushed up on them the first time that she was on the show, because she really uses the Peter Jackson movies as the images in them. I guess it came at the right time, right? We talked about this, where the technology was such where they could pull that off, but it wasn't quite the anti-white cornucopia that's going on now. I mean, we know it's always, if it was made in the last few years, it would have felt and looked very different than it did. So kind of hit this sweet spot, I guess, when it came out in the early 2000s. But Loralee does this tremendous work bringing in symbols and Jungian deep psychology and all kinds of things to really lay out why it is that Lord of the Rings resonated with so many people, and how it has a lot of analogs to the challenges going on in the world right now. You might be familiar with Carl Jung's statement, how the myths are to a culture what dreams are to an individual. So she really takes this deep dive into the symbols and the themes and the images, and gives us this big picture view of where we are now and the kind of forces at play. But it's very inspiring because, as my friend Jason here says all the time, it's another way that you can give context to the challenging times that we're in. And instead of being beaten down by them or getting depressed about it, you can rise to the occasion and say, what character do I want to be in this story? How do I want to contribute to this? How can I be a hero in my own way, or a heroine? But having said that, Loralee, welcome back to the after party.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me, and hail to you both, and happy Thanksgiving to all.
Thank you. You are in Canada, and I know you all celebrate.
Canada. Yeah. You're cutting out a little bit for
your
for
Thanksgiving
me.
in. Jason, how am I sounding?
Jared, you might have to shut off your video stream. You might have to shut off your video stream, because you were breaking up a little bit there. Try without the video. Yeah.
Okay, it's not just
I'll try
me.
for a
Okay.
bit. It's no settings have changed here, but we'll see. Maybe it needs to just rest for a second. But yeah, of course, the floor is yours to talk about whatever you want. I was just going to start with a light question. If you want to tell us anything, what Canadian Thanksgiving is like, or what what the story is with Canadian Thanksgiving, or what you guys eat? Do you do turkey like we do down here in the
We
States as well?
do. We do. But our Thanksgiving already happened in October. So
October, yes.
yeah, and it's not so much the major event here as it is in America. So yeah, a little bit different. But on the theme of Thanksgiving and giving thanks, I think that what I have been reflecting on a great deal over the past year is on this Promethean myth, and that coming as a consequence of the winter solstice last year. So now that we are approaching the solstice again, we're in the dark time, the time of descent. And what happened last year on the winter solstice was a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius. Now, Aquarius is associated with the Greek myth of Prometheus. So that story, of course, is old and comes to us from that period of time. But as I've been reflecting on how this whole business of defying the ruling order, how is that progressing over the course of this year? Because the last year solstice was like the breaking through into consciousness, or maybe even a re-breaking through into consciousness of this force in the human psyche that is the seeker of knowledge, wisdom, truth, and the expression of freedom. And this Promethean torch, obviously, is the light. So reflecting on the light and what does that mean, and how has that played out over the course of the last year based on not only this myth, because again, the Greek myths are from the time of the Greeks, a couple thousand or so years ago. But what I'm getting a sense of is the connection between the Greek myths, particularly this one, and the Lord of the Rings, which I think is an expression of this Promethean spirit, using the king archetype. So Tolkien uses the archetype of the king to express this urge within the human psyche to stand up to the ruling order, to stand up to the ring of power, and to claim our sovereignty, and to seek the higher dimensions of what it means to be a human. So then from Tolkien, we go to Jason's story of Prometheus Rising, which, as I've been reflecting, certainly in our preparation for our talk today, but also over the period of the year, Jason's story has come to mind many times, mostly in relation to the powerful imagery, like of the battle scenes. And as I've been observing all the goings on of the past year and the ups and downs and all the craziness, both inside and out, it has a feeling of these great battle scenes. I mean, there's great battle scenes in Lord of the Rings as well. And that sense of this roiling, boiling turmoil that is within the human psyche at large right now, but also it is in our own psyche. So I would suggest that many of us over the past year have had to descend to the underworld and sit in the muck of the terror, rage, and grief that leaves us vulnerable to the what I call the forces of evil, and our susceptibility to being manipulated and herded around like a bunch of cattle. And what really gives me heart right now, though, and in, I would say, like the past month or so, as I'm observing what's going on in the world, this rising of the Promethean spirit, millions and millions of people around the world really stepping up, really getting it that, hey, we can't sit around and think about this anymore. We have to stand, and we have to resist. And I see that happening, and thank God, thank all the gods and goddesses that this is occurring. And I don't like to use this word awakening because it tends to get so overused in the wrong way, but awakening in the sense of seeing the light, like realizing that we have within us this powerful force, the life force of the universe in the form of the light. And we cannot and will not submit to this force of evil that is rolling out to try to crush this spirit. So I feel very strongly, and have for some time, that this is the great battle of our time, and so hence my reflecting on these battle scenes from Jason's work and Lord of the Rings, and kind of feeling in. And I would invite everyone listening to take some time to just feel in to what might be lurking on the inside, the undigested terror, rage, and grief, that if we're not in touch with, if that's repressed, then we become very vulnerable to these forces that would seek to manipulate us and keep us away from the power of the light. So seeing this rising up of the spirit in the world at large, it is very heartening to me, because over the past year, I've had a lot of dark moments, and just really thinking like, oh, it's all over. Like, we're done. We're headed for 1,000 years of darkness, and that's it. But I don't feel that way now. And so here we are once again approaching the solstice, and we are also in eclipse season. And eclipses are very powerful. They occur in roughly 6-month cycles. So it turns out that last year, around the solstice, we also had eclipses going on. And then the next round of eclipses took place near the summer solstice. And now here we are back again in eclipse season. The last full moon on the 19th of November was a lunar eclipse. And a lunar eclipse is considered to be the time when we want to clear away the old dead stuff. And this is important because during the month of November, actually starting on October the 23rd to November the 23rd, the sun is moving through the sign of Scorpio, and Scorpio is the underworld. So what we ought to be doing, and I think what is in alignment with the cycles of nature at this time of year, is going down, descending into the underworld, looking into what undigested stuff there might be down there. And then when we have an eclipse full moon, it's the time to really dig in and scour out all that old crap and clear it out of the way, as we now prepare for the solar eclipse coming up on the 4th of December. And this solar eclipse occurs in the sign of Sagittarius. Now, just to, kind of give a scope on what Sagittarius is all about. So we go to the underworld, we do that cleanup kind of thing, and then we come back to a place of preparing. How do we now prepare then for the solstice, that darkest night, so to speak, or the shortest day, the longest night, however you want to think about it? But this time, from November 23rd to the solstice, is when we reflect on the meaning of life, and the meaning of the journey to the underworld. And I want to just read a quick quote from Jason's book, and talking about what it means to be Promethean. He says, reason, logic, and evidence, philosophy, logical consistency, the scientific method, and empiricism are at the core of Prometheanism. These things aren't new, but they have been eclipsed. Eclipsed, there you go, in all but the hardest of sciences. And even there, the anti-whites, who I think are in alignment with the forces of evil, are well on their way to supplanting truth with dogma, which is exactly what they've done. And that's the essence of the psychological warfare that's been used against us. And now we have the solar eclipse coming up in Sagittarius, which rules all of those things: reason, logic, philosophy, the seeking of knowledge, wisdom, and truth. And so the solar eclipse is the time when the new energy comes in. And according to Edgar Casey, he said that the solar eclipse was the time when the Earth's aura opened and souls come into the Earth plane to incarnate. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know, but the imagery is so powerful because we can think of it and align with that energy as a time of receiving seeds, new seeds that are coming in and making themselves available in the form of, our mind, our imagination, this capacity that we humans have to become greater than what we are. So this is a powerful event, again on the 4th of December. And then, of course, we have the solstice and the return of the light and the preparation for the next year. And I suspect that the next year will be a time of a lot of processing of what has taken place over the last 2 years. So I think we have some battles ahead of us, but again, the spirit is rising, and I think compared to just the breaking through of this Promethean spirit last year and how it has now built up steam, that yes, we will be going to battle. However, we have many more in our ranks now, many more so-called awake people, and a strength that is building, and that really gives me hope and trust, actually, in the long-term project of the Promethean spirit really coming into its fullness, which I suspect will start to happen in 2023. So around the equinox, March of 2023, Pluto goes in to Aquarius. So there is Pluto, the great transformer, the planet connected to metamorphosis, coming into Aquarius. And I would say that is the beginning of the reclaiming, really, of this Promethean spirit, and the ending, if you will, of this evil ruling order. However, during the next couple of years until 2025, Pluto does this little, it's called retrograde motion, where it goes back and forth a little bit. Towards the end, it dips back into Capricorn, then it steps into Aquarius. But the idea here is that we are headed for the realization, this metamorphosis, the realization of what it means for us as humans to embrace that Promethean spirit and really move forward in our evolution. And in Lord of the Rings, I think that spirit is quite evident in the elves. So it's like, at least in my interpretation of that, it's like the elves are representative of what we are capable of, that we have the potential to be elvish. And so I'm excited to see that happening.
I have a question before we bring
Mhm.
Oliver Semiogogue
Mhm.
on, and we're gonna have Oliver and Loralee on together for a little bit. That's always interesting.
Mhm.
But I just have a quick question that you'd said, and if
Mhm.
Oliver wants to pop in once you begin answering, of course we could bring him in. But you
Mhm.
said something towards the beginning of when you were speaking about how it is incumbent upon us to deal with grief and terror and rage, I think is how you put
Yeah,
it. Uh,
right.
and I'm curious what you think of on the personal level, all of us as
Mhm.
individuals,
Mhm.
that not that that kind of thing is ever done. As long as you're here living, there's
Mhm.
more to learn, there's more to adventure, there's
Mhm.
more to rebalance in yourself and find out blind spots you're never done. But
Mhm.
I'm curious what you think of people who are here listening to a show like this,
Mhm.
asking these questions and willing to look all these lies in the face.
Mhm.
If a certain amount of personal work is usually required to have the strength to deal with that,
Mhm.
the ability to even question things outside of the
Mhm.
narrative. And
Right.
I'm curious, like you said, so this is in a few different ways, because obviously, we're speaking generalities here, but there are a few things going on right now in the wider
Oh,
world.
yeah.
And sure,
Mhm.
they interrelate, but there's a few different things going on right now.
Mhm.
And I guess the thing that is globally the most obvious in the news is
Mhm.
everything going on around the COVID narrative. So
Yeah.
I'll ask it more in that frame, even though
Mhm.
that's not specifically what we usually talk about here.
Mhm.
It still relates, but because I want to frame it this way, I'm curious what you think about the people who honestly might be good people.
Mhm.
Again, I'm talking about the COVID thing. I'm not talking about
Mhm.
when we talk about anti-whiteism. There's not much wiggle room there. There's not much excuse.
Mhm.
Um, but there are people who might be looking on the TV screen and just thinking they trust. I try to put myself in a
Mhm.
position where I'm not having my own blind spots, and
Mhm.
understand that these people who get upset about the fact that there are people who are unvaccinated and things like that,
Yeah. Mhm.
they they trust what the TV is telling them.
Yeah.
They
Mhm.
think that others are putting them and their family at serious
Yeah.
risk.
Mhm.
They're not like anyone watching this show. We all come here from different angles, from different stories, but we're all one of the things, the common denominators, is that we're people who are willing to question authority and question the
Mhm.
narrative. Again, that doesn't give you carte blanche to go along with terror and violence and
Right.
psychological warfare against us peoples of European descent.
Mhm.
Uh, but like I said, I'll mainly keep it in the COVID thing because maybe it's a little easier to digest in
Mhm.
that frame.
Mhm.
I think there are. I'll speak for myself, but I don't think it's too much to say that there are plenty of good people who are going along with this because they just genuinely think, oh my goodness, there's this terrible health crisis and we all need to pull
Yeah.
together and wear masks and get jabbed. So what do you like? Where do you frame the person, that kind of person right now? Are they?
Mhm.
Is it because they haven't looked at themselves in other areas of their lives, or are they just not as contemplative or sensitive or willing to look at themselves, and thus
Mhm.
they just take in whatever they're told, kind of like school
Yeah.
children being fed by the
Mhm.
media? Uh,
Mhm.
is it just that it's just how things are? I mean, even though I think that it's very important for most of us to be questioning these things, and I'm excited as you are about, as crazy as everything is, a better tomorrow, new dawn, because of this tipping point of people waking up. I do realize when we've had other conversations on this show about society at large, you can't have a society where every single person is questioning the narrative all day, because
Right.
society's not going to work. As much as we get upset with these people who go along to get along, I think we all have to step back and have a little compassion, not let it eat us up either, hurt our souls, by remembering the fact that the world doesn't work if everyone's questioning life before breakfast every day.
Right.
Society works because most people just get up and go to work and do what they're supposed to do.
That's
The
right.
problem is what you're supposed to do part.
Yeah.
And how corrupt that is, and how we have a leadership class that's decidedly turned against us. But I'm just curious. I know this is a long way of asking it, and if Oliver's listening backstage, of course, I'd love to hear him after you speak about this.
I would too.
On in a moment. But where do you plug in those people to this conception? Are they maybe just late adopters? Are they going to wake up eventually? What do you make of that person who just watches TV? Says, we got to pull together and get the jab and wear our masks, but they mean well. Like, they're not bad people otherwise.
No.
What do you?
Well, I would say that what is really at the root of this whole issue is fear, and it is a consequence of trauma. And I would then add that anyone, probably just about everyone in the world right now, is in a state of fear. We've been put in this state of trauma-based mind control. Like, it's pounding on it for almost 2 years now. Be afraid, be afraid. Oh my God, be afraid, be afraid, be afraid. And so it works to infantilize people. And so when people who, maybe are just, your regular humans who don't think about depth psychology and the deeper roots of all of this, if you're constantly bombarded with this fear porn, it's going to affect you whether you're conscious of it or not. And I think the real problem there is that most people aren't conscious of the fact that they are under the spell of fear. And so this is where you get into the terror, rage, and grief, the terrible triad. So we tend to toggle, if there's undigested trauma. And I would say that most people have some level of trauma in their life. I mean, it doesn't have to be super severe, terrible, rape or war or whatever. It can just be things from the past, unresolved family system issues and so forth that leave these little trauma wounds. And so then when we find ourselves in a situation where we are under this psychological warfare, this trauma-based mind control, then all of the people who, maybe haven't had 20 years of therapy or delved deeply into the wounds of the past, they get cast into this infantile state and tend to then project mommy and daddy onto the authority figures. So it becomes then, well, so-and-so says we should do this and we should do that, and I don't know because I'm just, some lowly human here, but I'm afraid. So that puts people into that place where they're no longer really psychologically adult. So they give their power away to these authority figures, whoever, rolls out, whoever they roll out to, say, okay, here's the one who knows everything and is going to take care of you if you surrender to their agenda. And, most people are just trying to get through the day and pay their bills and look after their children. And so it's incredibly overwhelming to have to think about taking on the job of digging into all the research of this and that, and questioning these authority figures. So I think we're kind of in that sort of a dilemma. And as I said before, it's this terrible triad of terror, rage, and grief. So sometimes there's the tendency to just you go through all three of them, maybe on a daily basis. But it's a circuit. So different personalities. Some people would stay in the fear, in that terror, the fight, flight, freeze thing. Other people may go into anger and rage, or other people who, according to their psychological ingredients, or maybe get stuck in the grief and become depressed. And, what's the use? Let's just give up, kind of thing. So that's my take on that. Love to hear what you have to say, Oliver.
Hello, Oliver. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, gentlemen. Very happy to be with you all again. Hello, Miss Loralee.
Hello.
Jason, and Jared.
Welcome, brother. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks very much. Well, shall I just jump in and...
if you have any thoughts on
yes, please.
What's been said.
Yeah, I think the Loralee calling out the fight, freeze, flight aspect is a great place to start, because those are stress responses that, of course, have been documented across, higher animal life, certainly among mammals. I haven't done my research to tell you whether or not we can see such things in, for example, amphibians or lizards or whatever, but there's ample evidence across the people of fur and milk, the entire tribe of mammals, for fight, freeze, flight as a response. And you can sort of break down the way in which that natural set of responses is exploited in many respects with malice aforethought. So think about fight. So you've got a crisis response, you've got a stress reaction. And so a certain proportion of the population, I would say probably males are overrepresented in this for obvious reasons, are going to be like, well, it's time to push back and fight against this. So the target has been presented. It's the unvaccinated who are causing this with their willful wandering away from the straight and honorable path of sacrificing whatever is necessary to keep us all safe. So sick 'em, boys. The freeze response.
Obey.
Indeed, obey. And the freeze response is, I call that the squirrel. Squirrels are great because you have to look at the end of the gesture or movement of the squirrel. Whatever the darting is, suddenly it comes to a perfect freeze at the end.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's the idea, that you're going to disappear against the variegated background by remaining motionless.
I love that. That's great.
And a lot of people are going to engage in that fashion. You'll find that among both men and women. And it's a perfectly reasonable response in its evolutionary context, because first thing is figure out what's going on. Stop, don't make noise, don't move, conserve your energy, figure out what's happening. And then if you get a sudden adrenaline burst, it might be time to fight. It might be time to flee.
Exactly.
And with flight, that's something that you can often see with females. I did some research around the world looking at stress responses in cities for a big athletic and sportswear brand, and they didn't think that stress responses were a major part of why people worked out. And we found quite the opposite as we went to different cities and different countries. Flight is a way very often that women who don't have like a heavy brow ridge and the heavier upper musculature. You know, they're generally not designed to be fighters. They'll take to their heels. And we found that a lot of people living in an urban environment who are females would take up running. And I saw that in a very, very striking way when a friend of mine got attacked and had her neck and throat cut up by some attackers, and she picked up, she survived with some very interesting scars, but she immediately took up long distance running. It wasn't just enough to run. She had to run sufficiently to feel that she could just keep going and wear out whoever was pursuing her. So she took up like marathon running.
Wow.
And
That's fascinating.
You could see when people are fighting, you know, so to speak, when they're lifting weights, you know, they're shouting, they're dropping the metal to the ground, they're right. These things all happen. So the point is that it's biological, it's inbuilt, it has an evolutionary trajectory, but that doesn't really explain why, as Jared was asking, so many people seem to fold in the face of this. And I think that there are good evolutionary reasons for that again, I think are being exploited. So if you look at the way a herd responds to crisis, it's not a conscious thing that causes, for example, the animals at the center of a densely packed herd to sense that something's wrong and begin to bolt with the rest of the herd. There's something that passes like a ripple over that herd that's entirely unconscious and kicks off that that response. And you can see it even when you hear about, like, you know, something crazy happened at a concert or at a rally and everyone bolts and people are trampled and stomped. It's not as though their conscious mind is operating. And it's a thing that goes all the way back to Gustave Le Bon. He had this book, The Crowd, and in it he asserted that crowds are essentially feminine. And this is not to say that women can't be rational, et cetera, et cetera. It's more like yin and yang, right? So while there are exceptions among males or females, given whatever the more common thing you find is, you can still say, for example, that women are more likely to have a higher pitched voice and men are likely to be bigger, right? Likewise, with females, they have sort of the idea of the emotional response. And I've talked about this in the past, you know, how men in hunting parties, they go out and they want to read the physical signs of the environment very clearly because they have to make a determination about whether their arrow hit the deer. If the deer is bleeding, whether that's actually a blood spatter from the deer they wounded, because if they don't run it down, they're going to lose it by the time the sun goes down and no one will eat that night. Women, conversely, and I've probably even talked about it on this channel before, they tend to set up an emotional framework of support. So as they're all working, doing their separate things, they'll do this sing-song thing to each other, where they're not really, I don't mean to be rude, but you really don't even have to pay much attention to what words they're using. Just listen to the tone of their voice. And that's why women will very often get angry at men and be like, why are you talking to me that way? And the guys are thinking to themselves, well, why aren't you paying attention to the words I used? And why are you paying more attention to the tone it was delivered in? That sort of feminine aspect of the crowd that you can sort of see reflected in stampedes, and that kicks off all of these things like fight, freeze, flight. You know, if you have an orator up there and he hits some perfect pitch with his voice and he's got them at an emotional high point, and you can see him drawing up to be able to he's about to say something, and you can see the whole crowd just sitting there, eyes totally dilated, like children you're telling a fairy tale to. They're waiting for it. They're waiting. They're frozen in anticipation. Likewise, you can start to shake your fist and talk about who did this to you, and they'll begin to shout, and the pitchforks and torches appear, or they begin to stampede and go running in different directions in terror. There's just something about human beings, about crowd behavior that kicks off this sort of response. So that leaves us, I'm sorry, this is kind of winding, but you asked, how does the crowd come to a determination about what to do? And you really have to look at two things. One is how effective celebrity endorsement is. It's enormously effective. Like when we have the word noble, so we'll say this is a noble person. If you go look at the roots of that in etymology, it goes back to Greek gignosko. It's also the root of things like Gnostic, which is to know, to have direct experience of the mystical, right? Known, noble. A noble family is one that is known by others. So they're a person from a
Ah.
place. They're not like Taylor or Cooper or Carpenter or Smith as a last name. They're not identified by their class. They're identified by their association with a place and the fact that their family is known. So they'll talk about like Michel de Montaigne, right? He's of this place, right? Or sometimes they'll be known by their personal characteristics. Richard the Lionhearted, right? They are known by wide groups of people. Today, it's sort of been brought down to date, but we've got, the Kardashians or George Bush or whatever. These are known faces. So when people hear something that is said by them, and they know that these people have status and standing, they're going to be more inclined to listen, which is why, whatever you can say about marketing, people still love celebrity endorsements. And if you want to sell something, a great way to do it is to get someone who's known by everyone to say that they endorse it, and everyone will go, there's a good reason for that. So then we have to go back one last layer, and I promise we'll get to the end of this. What this comes down to is that in a crisis situation, it's a crisis situation. You can't experiment unless you're on such hard times that you're forced to. You have to turn to something that is reasonably tried, true, and tested. And on the one hand, that is tradition. On the other hand, it will be a known quantity, which is look to a known leader who has status and standing, rather than just whoever this guy is on the street who might recommend something. And what that comes down to is the risk associated with individual experimentation. I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of highly intelligent people are autists who tend to run on about all kinds of crazy, abstruse stuff that they're like, I'm not even sure I understand what you're saying, and your mouth is still moving, and I think you're crazy. Right? There's a reason that they even dismiss that. It's because there is risk associated with individual innovation and experimentation.
Yeah.
And so people are inclined to say, yeah, that's all nice and everything. But, this has worked for hundreds of thousands of years as evidenced by tradition, or you could be someone who's into biology and, selective pressure, evolution, and you can say, look, clearly there's some aspect of it that works because selective pressure has been applied and these features have appeared in this group. So you can see it's R selection, K selection. So there is a reason why we don't want to listen to crazy, innovative, outlier, minority opinions when we feel that we're faced with a crisis. There is a reason why we want to turn to the people who are known players in our group who have some standing, which you would assume corresponds to some greater fitness to react to the crisis. And then you've got the massive unconscious pressure that comes with any crisis response. It pushes you to fight, freeze, or flee. And you're going to be looking, many people are, it's going to be the minority that will think for themselves. You're going to be looking to what everyone else is doing. Because even though it's wrong sometimes, the vast majority of the time, it's a pretty good chance you need to do something. And if everybody's doing it, well, I mean, that's an option and you don't have to think too hard about it. You've got the weight of probability, so it seems, of the large numbers of people doing it. After the plague appeared in Europe in the middle of the 14th century, spontaneously, they had religious processions, rogational processions spring up where people would wander around the city and they'd flagellate themselves or pray for forgiveness. And but look at the core reaction there. It's framed in the context of a religious response. Let's go put a priest in front because it's a terrible crisis. Let's beg God for forgiveness. But what's actually the first thing they did? They gathered together in a group and said, man, everything is really bad. It's time to walk. Now, in this case, they stayed in their general region, but the human reaction to that, the biological reaction, the mammalian reaction, like all the wildlife fleeing before an oncoming forest fire, is to get up and move. And so the vast majority of the responses that we're seeing are things that come straight out of biology. But what happens is people who've, spent quite a bit of time studying these things, like, from Pavlov to Skinner to Freud to Bernays to Le Bon to any of these folks, I mean, look at the great guys from advertising and manipulation. Edward Bernays worked for the U.S. government producing propaganda in World War I. So did Walter Lippmann. You know, so from propaganda posters to psychological manipulation, all the way back into the evolutionary roots, there's a reason for this, and that's the real problem that we're facing, is that you've got natural responses, which it's kind of like telling a lie where you want to keep most of it true because it makes it easier and more plausible. Likewise, if you try to put a bit and bridle on, let us say metaphorically, the horse of a natural biological reaction, you just have to tweak it a little bit, and you'll get it to pull your cart. And so if that cart is to dominate populations or to introduce, you know, a world where everything's been built back better, you know, you kind of wonder when people are going to realize that that in order to build everything back better, everything's got to be destroyed first, you know, wink, wink. You know, they simply harness these predispositions, and the result, as depressing as it is visible there before us all.
Wow, thank you for that, Oliver. That was great. Would you also say that it's the idea of there's safety in the herd, like something like that? Okay, as long as I'm in the herd, there's some kind of safety, and does this kind of fight, flight, freeze mechanism then cut us humans off from our ability to engage in creative problem solving?
Yeah, I think that's you've tapped on a very important thing there with the second part, the creative problem solving, which I myself was trying to tap when I mentioned the idea of individuals engaging in, you know, odd experiments out on the intellectual fringe.
Yeah.
Risk comes with that. Like, take a look at Freud himself, right? So he had all these ideas about the best way to raise a family, and he decided that all the traditional ways had real serious problems associated with them, right? Like, he would talk about how you have the desire to kill the father and take the mother as your wife. Like, he came up with all these sort of, I don't know, in some cases they were tied to you know, myth and folklore, and in some cases you could say probably there are some aspects of that, like, you know, if someone has a really dominating, abusive, sort of devouring mother kind of figure, they'll go off and grow up and go find a woman who more or less does the same thing for them as a wife, right? But he comes in, so you've got the Oedipal complex, right, or the Electra complex, or the idea that the son wants to supplant the father, usurp his position, and kill him. So that's all interesting. Perhaps it has its place when you're trying to figure out unconscious content or delusions or dream material, or you're trying to get to the root of some kind of pathological problems based on mental issues. But it's a really risky thing to step forward and say, man, Freud's got these brilliant ideas. Let's just go ahead and raise a group of children totally based on his ideas. That's a risk. He's a creative thinker out on the outskirts, and you could argue there's some things he understood and that do have value. I'd say for the most part he was ripping off Nietzsche, but that's a side story that we don't have to go into. He essentially tried to basically pick up where Nietzsche left off and didn't give any credit to Nietzsche for the ideas he took from him, including chasing after the woman that Nietzsche had fallen in love with and having an affair with her. That's a side note. You have this guy, he's a creative thinker, he's out on the edge, and he comes up with these wild ideas. Yes, it might have some value, but there's risk associated with trying to apply his thinking. And if you go watch, for example, what is it? It's part of the Century of the Self series. It's the Manufacture of Consent documentary. They talk about the way in which Freud's ideas were taken and applied to these children, and they all ended up total wrecks and killed themselves.
Whoa, really?
Well, yeah, at least one of them committed suicide. It was a total mess. So now think about a situation where you have a crisis where you can't afford to screw around. Is that the time to have a creative thinker from the outskirts saying, well, maybe let's look at how this spike protein stuff works? Like, I don't want to go into this in the live stream, but, you know, just to tap the subject. The other thing is that instinctive responses are faster. If someone's coming up and trying to turn my head inside out with a fist, and I want to think about it,
Right.
that is slow. Whereas an instinctive response, I mean, that's why your eyes in the front of your skull, they're not delivering the sense impressions that come visually are going to arrive at your brain and be processed much faster than the other ones, because the eyes are actually on two enormous high bandwidth nerve stalks that run directly into the brain. Not only are they high bandwidth, but they're physically positioned to be as close to the brain as possible. So think about responding to something instinctively, and that's more like vision. And then think about like responding to what you feel down in your foot. Like if you wait to move your foot out of the way as a tiger goes to bite it, and you don't base it on what you visually see, but you instead base it on, you know, when the signal eventually gets to your brain that your foot's been crushed by the tiger's bite, you know, you've got a distinct survival disadvantage. So I guess I tapped the things there to wrap. In the one case, the individual experimentation, there are reasons. Once again, it's a natural response that has its value that's being weaponized. You know, go listen to the celebrities because they're a known quantity. Well, you want to turn to a known quantity. Would you take advice from your mother before some stranger on the street? Yeah, there's a good reason for it. But what's happening is, in this case, they've weaponized that to say, oh, these are just fringe people. These are just fringe people. You must listen to the science. You must listen to the science.
Yeah, I should point out, though, I mean, you know, my question would originally to Loralee, you took it to like a group thing, which makes sense. I was speaking more about that, you know, who's susceptible to it individually, you know, because she was talking about doing this introspective work prior. But on the group level, you know, we should point out, I don't know, who knows what the real numbers are, but at least here in the States, it's very much breaking down along political lines, as you know. And when it's perfectly relevant to your discussion, Oliver, of the celebrity endorsement, because it's basically, it's not even about that health thing. It's about people who actually trusted CNN and Hollywood and Netflix, and everyone who knows that that is a whole dog and pony show. So what we're seeing is not really a response to COVID as such, but who you're trusting. So if we run with your sketch of listening to the celebrities, half of America really does listen to the celebrities, like you just said. Half of America does listen to the Kardashians and the Obamas, et cetera, and half of America doesn't.
I'd say half of America listens to one set of celebrities, or let's say 43% of America listens to one set of celebrities. 43% of America listens to a different set of celebrities, and you know, maybe 4% are irrational and take a distance and try to look at it.
Who are the 43% celebrities that are talking out against this kind of thing? I see very, very little, and they're sidelined.
That's fair in this particular case, but they are sidelined, and under circumstances where enormous, I would guess that under circumstances where enormous institutional pressure had not been brought to bear to say, toe the line, or we're going to throw you out the window. Literally, we're going to smash and destroy you if you don't toe the line with all of this. I think you would see it kind of unfold differently, but that's a fair point. 43 or whatever was just my being cute. For any given subject, you could probably say that, you know, it'd probably be some kind of Pareto distribution, right? 80-20.
Yeah, I mean, the more relevant thing for us to talk about is, and it relates to what Loralee was speaking about. I don't know if you heard her from the beginning when she joined, but what we're living through is a changing of the guard. And we're doing what we can, what's in our power to do, but concurrent with that, of course, we're also hoping and watching that the kinds of celebrities and power structure that you talk about shows their hand, so that even among those people who do trust them and look up to them and use them as a surrogate authority figure, surrogate mommy daddy figure, that they fumble it so badly that they reveal themselves to even a significant portion of those people who do trust them right now. And Loralee, when you talked about what you're projecting out for
I was just going
things
to
turning
say some
around. Does it
things
go in this
about
direction?
projection. Yeah. Yeah, that I think what you're touching on here is this issue of projection and how powerful that is. As you're describing, Oliver, these characters that are presented to us, and because they're images, they're archetypes, and those archetypal characters, in a sense, kind of capture certain aspects of our own psyche, usually that which is repressed. So the more repressed, or the more parts of the self that are repressed, then the more likely certain characters, movie stars, because do people really consciously separate the fact that, hey, this is just some person
No, they don't.
from the characters that they play in their movies? I think that it's, whether they believe it or not, but there's some kind of unconscious inner idea that, oh, okay, here's, whatever movie star, and they played this and this and this role, therefore they're probably like that. And so they can carry the image or the aspect of one's own inner self that isn't yet realized. So the power then goes out to these authority figures, whether they're movie stars or, whoever claims to be an authority.
Loralee, yeah, I was speaking about projection in that sense as well. Actually, a moment ago when I used the word projection, I meant it more when you were speaking about forecasting, when you were speaking about the next year and a half. How you
I
feel
see. Okay.
that we have some, as I said, we do what we can, but at the same time, one can only hope that the powers that be are fumbling and they're going to have these own goals and kind of reveal themselves so severely that even a significant number of the people who do look up to them will more and more question them, and essentially their authority is going to crumble. Like what we're hoping for is a changing of the guard, and all of these things, from more obvious sources of power like politicians to the subtle ways that people are influenced by the media they consume and sports and all of this, is that there's going to be some kind of a seismic shift in where a majority of people are putting their attention. That's the ultimate hope, is that what we're living through right now, as severe as it is, as challenging as it is, not to belittle all the real pain and confusion that people are going through, is that at the other end of this, there is going to be a different kind of leadership class and a different kind of media that I mean, we've talked about this before, but just a whole different structure and different narrative. And again, we're doing what we can here to be at the avant-garde of that, to be pushing forward with that. And at the same time, we're kind of watching these so-called leaders. I don't like the word elites, but I know that that's used as a shorthand, just muck it up for themselves. And I was just curious, Loralee, if that's the kind of thing that you were indicating earlier when you were first speaking, that you said that you didn't, you've had some dark days, as we all have, but ultimately you were feeling a lot more hopeful. Is this the kind of direction, what I'm speaking to now, is that the kind of direction that you were thinking in when you said that you feel hopeful?
Yeah. And there's a term in evolution theory called punctuated equilibrium, where evolution goes along and, it's kind of, little bit, and then boom, there's some, often a catastrophe of some kind that then completely shifts the whole dynamic and a whole new, more complex order emerges. So I would say that we are kind of in that kind of a process, certainly at the psychological level, and I would say it's a maturation process, moving us hopefully out of this propensity to be infantilized and to just follow the herd off the cliff kind of thing, and so that more and more people can move beyond, I guess what you were describing, Oliver, as these kind of instinctual patterns. And yeah, just based on all your studies, Oliver, of animal behavior and signs and things of that nature, what are your thoughts on this punctuated equilibrium idea in terms of our human evolution at this time? And I would just also add that why I'm thinking this way is due to these particular astrological dynamics that are emerging, namely Pluto going into Aquarius, which is a major cycle change astrologically.
Yeah, I think, yeah, the whole idea of basically what you're talking about with punctuated equilibrium, it sounds like the old joke about, little by little, then all at once. That seems to be a property of complex systems. And so sort of the
chaos theory
and structuralist takes on things, they basically come in and they say, it's emergent behavior, right? The conditions of this complex system are such that they arrive at this point where they create or they give rise to particular behaviors that are really, it all comes out of linguistics, where and diachronic and synchronic, the idea that I'm not going to go into that. The point is that there is the idea of a complex system that of its very nature, based on the structures or the elements of the structures and the relationships between them, they will give rise to a certain thing over time, right? So, prepare a field in a certain way over a long enough period of time, then a certain kind of seed is likely to land in it and grow, right? Sort of that kind of thing. And that's a very structuralist take. So you'll see like the NRX guys and Moldbug and all of that. They'll be like, what's happening here? There is no centralized conspiracy. This is just what happens when you have a system of this sort with the various interlocking elements, and it gives rise to this type of person. Or to our immediate circumstances of this sort or whatever, right? So you could say it makes perfect sense to imagine that the Black Plague, to come back to that since I mentioned it earlier, it appeared in the 14th century in Europe because Europeans weren't very clean. Right. You don't have to say that and then there was just bad luck with a ship coming from China or whatever, people in the Far East kept their pigs in the same building that they slept in. They stabled their animals to keep them warm, whatever. That's a property that emerges from these set of constraints within the system. That is real. It absolutely is. And it's a feature that we have to be aware of for how things happen. However, you've also got people who do make plans. It's like the old joke my friend Tim used to say: only the poor conspire, the rich simply make plans. And then you have like the more complicated arrangement, which is, what if you're a group of very rich people capable of planning ahead, very rich, powerful, and influential people, and you can create the circumstances? You could say the system naturally gives rise to this. Okay, but who created this system? Right? There's very much a thing that we have to armor ourselves against to some extent, I think, which is the vestigial idea of progress as being inevitable. And it's progress in quotes, and it's always inevitable. There's nothing we can do about it. It's perfectly natural that that drag queens are now reading stories to your kids, because that's progress, and progress cannot be changed or avoided. It simply pushes forward. It's a force of nature, that sort of thing is there, where certain things develop. We could see it in the historical record over time. Certainly, like in society, you can see that there's a tendency for people to try to incorporate more and more under centralized control. So you could say that that's a property that does occur. But with your punctuated equilibrium model, after a certain point, it sort of begins to collapse under its own weight. You have the fall of empires. You have, regional
Right.
stuff rise up in the background. So I think what you're talking about is very real, and that it does happen. But at the same time, I am not the sort of person to just totally write off the idea that there are also people who sit down in meetings and that they don't conspire. They simply make plans. And that brings us around to what Jared was talking about, sort of with elites. And we could get into defining elites another time, but let's just assume that there's a relatively small proportion of people in any given human society at any given time that wield outsized influence and control over events. It might be an oligarchy in ancient Athens, right? It could be a priestly class in Sassanid Iran. Doesn't matter. The point is that a relatively small number of people are going to be responsible for introducing the changes that we face. And so while on the one hand, and I'll wrap this up, on the one hand, we can sort of wait for the circumstances to emerge that lead to the kind of changes that we all hope for. On the other hand, there's always a minority that wields outsized influence. And so it would seem to be prudent on our part to not only sort of trust in God and keep your powder dry, like Cromwell said. We should also try to foster and push forward and advance our own elite, with the understanding that at a certain point, that group is going to be in a better position to make the kind of changes we want to see happen.
When the going gets weird, the weird turn pro.
Right.
Not mine, Hunter S. Thompson. Anyway, we have ForNull here. I don't know if either of you would like to hang out for a minute, but you're welcome to stay. But we do want to hear from ForNull, and anything ForNull you might want to talk about. I don't know if you were listening for a few minutes and had any commentary, or if you want to totally switch gears and just talk about what kind of food that you ate yesterday for our American Thanksgiving. But our good friend, musician and producer extraordinaire, our friend and yours, ForNull, is here. Welcome and happy Thanksgiving.
Hey, how's it going? Happy Thanksgiving, Jared and Jason.
Happy Thanksgiving, brother.
Yeah, good to see you. And Semiogogue and Loralee, hello.
Hello.
Yeah,
Hey.
no, I have nothing to add to any of that. I was kind of only half paying attention, to be honest. I'm working in the background while I was waiting, so I was listening, but not hard enough to form thoughts about it.
No, not surprised that you're working on something, always working, always tinkering. Is it anything you can tell us about? Is it music related? Is it 3D graphics? Is it video?
It's a website. No, nothing really interesting. Just something I've been tinkering with. It has to do with the YouTube API and just playing around with that and working on a database and just experimenting with some stuff. Oh my God, I almost look like a laser pointer hit your window behind you, Jared.
Yeah, there's
that was weird.
There's a lightsaber fight going on behind me. But,
yeah, or somebody's got their sights on your window.
I think
that was kind of freaky. What'd you say?
I think it was just a car light, actually. When we did the Who We Are video a couple of years ago, there was a part where I forget who was being quoted, but talking about European peoples in general, someone said that we are ceaseless tinkerers, and you fit that bill very well. You're like a digital media tinkerer, ForNull, always doing things with websites and apps and music and 3D graphics and video. This guy's a wealth of information. You might know that we collaborated on a song together last month. We were celebrating that the last time we did one of these multi-guest streams on Halloween about a month ago. Anything you want to tell us about? There's different kinds of food. I was talking about this with my family yesterday at Thanksgiving. Around America, you could see a lot of the different regionalisms when you break down what people have, especially the side dishes. We know the turkey's standard, but the sides. How was your Thanksgiving?
It was great. Yeah, we just my kids were visiting the other relatives. So it was just me and Mrs. ForNull, and she made us a little mini feast. We just had a turkey, of course, but she just got like a big breast, and baked that. So not a whole turkey. And we had green beans with bacon, mashed potatoes, and cranberry sauce. I think that was it.
Anyone here do mac and cheese? I think that's bigger in the South. Oliver, I know you're down in the South. You do
Absolutely the best. Mac and cheese is mighty.
See, I like mac and cheese, but I don't. That's never been served at the Thanksgiving table where I'm from. And I know people are big on green beans and often cut bacon in, just like Mrs. ForNull did. But I've never had green beans on Thanksgiving either. It's always peas. The green is peas with onions. Cranberry sauce.
Yeah, we used to do mac and cheese. My aunt would always make the mac and cheese, and like she knew I loved it, so she would always be looking at me like with this devilish grin, like, I got the mac and cheese, and I'm going, all right. And then I had to eat twice as much as I wanted just to make her feel good about it. But
yeah,
but it didn't hurt.
I try to, Loralee.
I was just going to ask, is there, like, what exactly do you mean by mac and cheese? Is there sort of a traditional combo macaroni and cheese dish?
Either one of you gentlemen want to educate our Canadian friend here?
Yes.
Well, with ours, it was like regular macaroni, and then I don't know, maybe cheddar cheese and or the 4 cheese blend, and you just bake that. So you put all that in
like a casserole.
Huh?
It's different ways to do it, but my mom would do, again, not on Thanksgiving, never been Thanksgiving, but kind of gets crusty up top, but then it's all gooey and the cheese is melted with the pasta under it.
Yeah, the crunchy part's really good too. So
the best of the best comfort food, designed to knock you flat down with heart attack or stroke within like 10 minutes of eating it. I love it.
Well, what about dressing up the macaroni and cheese with like other stuff? Is that not acceptable?
It needs no tarting up.
Okay. All right. I'll trust you on that.
No, there are other ways that people do other things that are sort of similar to it that turn it into other dishes. I mean, it's not really, if you were to add tomato sauce and ground beef, for example, it'd sort of be moving into lasagna land, but mac and cheese in and of itself, it's intended as a side in most, most people aren't going to eat it as any kind of like central dish. So it sort of stands on its own, like collard greens or black-eyed peas or, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it does. It uses different cheeses, Loralee, than an Italian dish. I know it sounds very Italian, like Oliver said. If you just add tomato sauce, it sounds like it would be just pasta and cheese, but it's not provolone or different Italian cheeses, Parmesan. It's generally cheddar, and then like ForNull said, you could get different mixes. Yeah, I mean, you go to certain restaurants and they have like gourmet mac and cheese with Gruyere and this and that, like fancy cheeses, and some of those can be really good. It's definitely a stick to your ribs kind of thing, like Oliver said. It probably takes more energy out of you than it gives you.
nap time. As soon as you've had the proper dose, like ForNull was talking about how he had to eat more in order to keep the family members happy. It's definitely, it's one of those nap time things. You're like, okay, let me just see if I can make it over to the sofa before I pass out.
Carb coma.
Yeah. I don't know if either any of you guys do this. Let me know. I find myself consciously making sure I go back to the turkey often, because all the sides otherwise in the Thanksgiving meal, the American Thanksgiving meal, are starches, really, carbs, and they taste great, but I don't eat that way normally in my day to day. You do little things differently for the holiday, and but I want that protein of the turkey. I remind myself, like, keep going back to the turkey and because you have like this part of your plate's the turkey, But then if it's a pie chart, there's all this other, there's the two types of potatoes. We have the peas, which are green, but they're, it's a little different with peas. Maybe I should do green beans like you do, ForNull. And
we had dessert too. We had a medieval treat. It was like a baked pear with cinnamon on it. That was pretty good too. It's real simple, but it said medieval treat on the recipe. Who knows if they just said that to make it sound cooler, but
you just wanted to be able to say that on the after party. You're like, honey, let's have a medieval treat. So I can
it's not medieval unless you have like jesters dancing in front of you while you eat it and people playing like flute music and like engaging in hand-to-hand combat to entertain you for your meal.
Did you
it
stab
sounds like
it
that
with a
video
dagger?
You can dance, we can dance,
Right.
with the jester dancing around.
Right. Man.
Did they have pears in medieval times?
I would imagine.
Don't question the marketing, Loralee. Given what we were talking about earlier, did you stab the pear with a dagger, ForNull, and then just take a bite out of it?
No.
Right. Throw the bones over your shoulder to the dogs.
Yes,
like
the pear bones.
Right.
Well, these are medieval pears, so they still had bones in them back then.
ForNull, that's how you could have made it medieval. You could have been eating the pear, but on the other hand, the big turkey bone, just all.
Oh yeah.
Well, actually, I have not. I have not eaten yet, guys. So this talk is actually, believe it or not, I did not eat a ton yesterday, and I have some things calling to me in my refrigerator. I think I might just have to go eat now as a result of this talk about mac and cheese. But the good news is that I can make room for other people coming in as well. But
that sounds good. We have Yizz coming up, and I'm very curious to hear about what
Happy Thanksgiving, Oliver.
Happy Thanksgiving, Oliver.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy Thanksgiving to all y'all, and give my best to Yizz as well. That wild Yizz from the eastern reaches of Tennessee. And I will catch you guys again soon. Thanks so much for having me on.
All right, Oliver.
Thanks, Oliver. Great talking to you.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And I think I better hit the road pretty quick too. So I will take my leave. Thank you so much. It's been great, and you guys have a great rest of your stream here.
We will.
Hello,
and
Loralee,
I really want to thank you for quoting from my book. That is very meaningful to me. Thank you very much.
Oh, great. Well, I would encourage everyone to read Prometheus Rising. So there you go, your homework for the next few months, everyone. All right.
Have a great evening.
Bye for now.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye-bye. Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye.
It's a shame I didn't get to talk to Oliver before he left. He's always fun. I like him.
Happy Thanksgiving, Yizz.
Happy Thanksgiving to you guys. I hope you're all well.
So you might have been listening for the last few minutes and know that we got on the subject of food. Hard not to talk a little about food when we're talking about Thanksgiving. So what was on your menu?
We don't really like turkey. So we did roast barbecue chicken, a giant meatloaf. We've got mac and cheese, shells and cheese. We've got barbecue baked beans. I think green beans, we got some of those left too. And my cousins brought a bunch of stuff, and my husband's dad made a bunch of stuff too and brought us some kind of ice cream cake I've not even looked at yet. We still have like 3 days worth of food left, but that's what it's like around here.
Yeah, it's a 4-day thing. That's cool. So you had chicken and a meatloaf.
We started Monday night because we make what we do is the week of Thanksgiving, me and my cousins and friends and family, we visit each other's houses all week, trade food, hang out, get together, and help each other all put up Christmas decorations. So it's kind of like a family community thing that we do. So my mom's house is done, my cousin's house is done. We don't really do much here at my husband's house, but we're pretty much done already. So it was good, but I'm haggard because I've been working like 12 hours a day with this new contract I got. So I'm beat from having to talk loud all day long and suck down exhaust and carry stuff in and out in the cold. I'm just beat.
Well, we appreciate you spending a few minutes with us.
That's fine. I just got done. Usually I get done around this time each night. So it coincided perfectly with me just getting in the door and getting out of my dirty work clothes and relaxing for a minute.
Well, we appreciate it. Are you gonna, like Oliver, when you get off with us, you're gonna go have yourself a nice plate?
Oh, most certainly. I haven't eaten for like 8 hours. I'm starving, so I can't wait. I don't think I'm going to sample that ice cream cake. I'm not big into sweets and ice cream, but there's going to be a meatloaf and mac and cheese and ketchup with my name on it. So I'm gonna smother it good because I have no taste.
Yeah, you should have talked to Oliver, but I know you two are old friends. Because he would. You put the ketchup on the meatloaf or also on the mac and cheese?
No, I was mostly making a joke about hillbillies and rural people just putting ketchup on stuff for no reason, and it was mostly a joke. But we do like to use a ketchup-based paste on our meatloaf that we make.
Hey, it works on meatloaf. Yeah,
I like ice cold ketchup with shells and cheese, like just like a little bit of it, just to dip and get like a cold tomato taste with the mac and cheese. That's really good. You should try it sometime.
That works. Hey, as Oliver said, if you have tomato sauce in the Italian, pasta, cheese, you could put a little ketchup on mac and cheese. That works.
Oh, it's really good if you have a really nice marinara or some kind of red sauce that you use for cooking your pasta with. That's really good with mac and cheese too. I can attest to that. Is that what he was talking about? Putting pasta sauce with mac and cheese?
He's like, I don't want to speak for Oliver, especially on a subject of this gravity, but he seemed to be of the opinion that mac and cheese stands on its own. You don't need any condiments. You don't need any sauces. It has everything it needs. It's a world unto itself.
I concur. Wholeheartedly.
Maybe we'll have to get a little mac and cheese debate going in the chat.
Is there any mac and cheese?
Oh,
mac and cheese made out of meat. That's what I want to know.
What was that, Jason? Sorry.
Is there any mac and cheese that's made out of meat? Because then I would be interested.
Yes. The mac and cheese that I make is Velveeta shells and cheese, and I dice up country ham, and I cook it together. I mean, I cook it separate before I put it together, so the ham gets nice and charred and burnt. And then when it softens up in the mac and cheese, it's like a hybrid of country ham and bacon, but in the mac and cheese, or in the shells and cheese. It's really good. You'd probably like it.
Maybe, but Jason wants just meat.
Yeah, maybe if we take out the ham.
Maybe if we take the mac and cheese out of it and just leave everything else that you said there.
Okay. Country ham's a good breakfast. Sometimes that's all I'll eat. So.
Yeah. Do you focus, Jason, just on the turkey?
Oh yeah. Well, when it comes to the carbs, I'll take like one bite of each of the carbs. And but then the main focus is obviously on the meats that are present.
Well, that's what I was saying before. And I'm just kind of a slouch and I'm fat, so I get to eat carbs if I want.
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier. That I try to keep it balanced because the Thanksgiving meal itself is so carb heavy. So I try to take 2 bites of turkey for every bite of carbs. I don't quite do it.
I certainly don't eat like this all year. It's just a few occasions. So.
No. But yeah, it seems like okay. So you both have mac and cheese. I don't have mac and cheese with Thanksgiving. I have it. I don't really have it that much, but other times in the year, but not Thanksgiving. Not Thanksgiving. Jason, do they serve mac and cheese when you go to family gatherings for Thanksgiving?
Actually, no. We have noodles, dumplings, green beans, obviously lots of turkey, dark and light meat, and lots of ham, and a range of stuffing, and just a range of things. But I haven't had. Maybe we've had mac and cheese available a couple times, but that's not the norm. So you do ham as well? Yes. Oh, there has to be ham.
I love ham.
Someone will be hurt if there's
to eat of the swine is most divine.
Yeah, there you go.
See, yeah, I grew up with one meat, just turkey, and then you get the ham at Christmas usually.
Well, me and my cousin aren't really a fan of turkey, and about half of us don't really like it one way or the other. So we usually do barbecue chicken, sometimes pulled pork. Occasionally we'll have a big piece of venison or something somebody's prepped. I thought we were going to have venison this year, but it all got packaged and frozen. We didn't have any thawed, but
ForNull.
Yes, sir.
Do you mix meats or just straight up turkey on Thanksgiving?
Mix meat. Well, this year just turkey, but yeah, when it was, when everyone was still around, not to sound morbid, but when the whole family would gather and there was a lot of us, there would be, all kinds of stuff. I mean, so many dishes that you'd have to have 2 plates, to get a little bit of everything, and you'd just be sick from eating so much. But yeah, ham for sure.
Yeah,
and no venison
here.
though. Huh?
I guess I'm in the minority here. I've never been around a Thanksgiving that had multiple meats. None of this mixed meats. Yeah.
Really?
Just turkey. Yeah, just turkey, and then different sides. Like
well,
just ham. I don't know if people are getting hungry in the chat. I don't know if we should
I'm certainly hungry. I'm starving.
I just realized I didn't have stuffing this year. I knew something was missing from the combo. Okay.
That is rare. Like almost every Thanksgiving. Not even at my house, but everywhere I go, almost everybody has at least a cheap box of stovetop made up. But you didn't have any this year?
No, and I thought a flavor was missing. But I was just so happy that we had it anyways because we didn't have any family over. So it was super cool that Mrs. ForNull just whipped up a Thanksgiving meal. But yeah, now I'm realizing I missed out on some stuffing. I'm gonna have to.
I think you're gonna have to make some this weekend.
You have to come. You have to come visit my mountain holler. Bring the missus.
Okay.
You'll have all the Thanksgiving leftovers to take home. You can eat.
There you go. Cool.
I don't think you call it a mountain holler. I pictured like this little like Hobbit alcove or something.
That's kind of how we live out here. Yeah. You should come visit one day.
I mean, not in a hole in the ground though, like a Hobbit.
Well, sort of. I mean, a lot of people's homes are half built into hills, and they have like underground wine cellars and bunkers and stuff. Like it's kind of prep country out here anyway.
So nice. that when you say a holler,
yeah,
is it
like
does it just mean like my place, like my house, my location, or does that have a more specific context?
It has a more specific context. It means my neck of the woods, my neighborhood, that kind of thing. Because most people around here, the way the housing's built and the way people just sort of gravitated in the last, I guess, couple hundred years, is every holler has a little road or two that goes up it, and different family clans had land, and then they would sort of be their own little community with their own little corner store, their own little barber, that kind of thing. And it's when you say holler, it kind of means like my neck of the woods or the neighborhood I live in the city or the suburb or the block I live in the city or whatever. That's kind of how a holler gets used colloquially.
Yeah, that's interesting about this little like area though, where there were a few families, I guess, from original settlers, and then you have your little store and barbershop. It's like mini towns.
Well, a lot of those have closed down in the last 10 years. Like the modernization of things has kind of killed a lot of small businesses. But then again, things have kind of moved on when it comes to the small businesses. There are so many of them that had been boarded up since I was a kid around here. It's kind of sad, but a lot of them still stand at least. So, we can still talk about them, but the longer the reach of the interstates, the longer the reach of the corporations come, and nobody can really compete with Home Depot and McDonald's. So that's just how it goes.
How far drive are you to the nearest Home Depot?
35 minutes, 30 minutes, not too awful long, but that's because out on a holler and over a hill, I can get on a primary interstate, and there's a lot of small townships and cities not too far from here. So even though I do live in the boonies, it only takes me like 20 or 30 minutes to get to anything. So it ain't too far out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah, that word holler definitely paints a certain picture. So I get it now.
Good.
Holler.
Well, y'all should come visit me one day. You'd love it here. It's beautiful. I can show you the family land. I can show you where I grew up. show you some of these old closed down businesses and take you to churches that have been here since the war between the states, and just show you some local heritage if you want.
Yeah.
That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's great. I could even take you to the historic little township I got to walk through with Sister Dresden, and I can show you where we went. It was a lot of fun.
That's cool. It just has a certain coziness to it. Hot, like, come visit my. You always say that when you're on the show, but I've never asked you about it. Like, come to my mountain holler.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, come see where I live, meet my folks, meet cousins, that kind of thing. Like, come on up here.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard it before. You've said it, but I never. Now we got into like the not the etymology of it, but we got under the hood of it a little bit more.
I watched this show on YouTube called Whippoorwill Holler, and I didn't know what that holler part was until now. So now I understand why they call it that. That's like their little neck of the woods.
You know how like in big suburbs around cities, they'll have like, oh, this is Shady Grove. And it's like, 2 little roads and like 50 homes. And that's called, Shady Wood or whatever. That's kind of how holler is used out here.
Yeah, that's cool.
Before suburban developments, this was the original. That was the real deal, and now
I don't know how original it is, but maybe in America.
Well,
I don't know.
Before definitely more original than suburban developments and little cul-de-sacs.
Oh, sure, yeah, definitely.
With McMansions and things like that.
Yeah.
So for no, you don't live in a holler. You didn't.
No, I don't live in a holler. I don't even know what you'd call where I live. Kind of was the suburbs at one time, but just that sprawl keeps happening. So
that's what I call cookie cutter America, because you can go about anywhere and that's about the same. At least that's my experience driving cross country a lot. So
yeah. Well, we have Karissa from Hearth and Helm is about to jump on.
Oh, I'll drop out.
Thank you.
Hi, Karissa.
Thank you.
Would you like me to depart now? Would you like me to take my leave?
No. Oh, you're welcome to stay for a few minutes.
I'll
happy Thanksgiving to you, ForNull.
Thanks, you guys. Happy Thanksgiving. Thanks for having me on. We'll talk to you later.
I'll say howdy to Karissa, then I'll shove off too, because I'm really hungry.
Happy Thanksgiving, Karissa.
Happy Thanksgiving, or belated Thanksgiving, rather.
Happy Thanksgiving.
I don't know if you've been on for a few minutes, but everyone's getting each other hungry by talking about food.
Oh yeah. Well, I was really interested in hearing about the holler and everything.
Oh, okay.
I got very that was interesting. I enjoyed hearing it all.
The way I grew up, it might as well have been 1920 out here. It's really, really homey and cozy up here. I love it.
We live in rural Appalachia, so it's really rural and cozy here too. So
good.
We enjoy it.
I live on the border of Virginia and Tennessee. How about you?
I'm in North Carolina, Western North Carolina.
Oh, that's one.
So really not terribly far.
Yeah, that's some of the most beautiful place in all the Appalachian Mountains is right there on the border of Tennessee and North Carolina, going through the was it Blue Ridge Parkway? Is that what they call it? Where you drive through there?
Yeah,
God, I love that.
Yeah, there's some beautiful
that in years. I should go back.
No, it's really magical to go up there. Yeah. You can do some hikes up there, and it's like you're in Middle Earth, really.
Yeah, that's why I said to Jared, yeah, it is like hobbits here.
It is. I know about Blue Ridge Mountains a bit, and they are gorgeous.
Yeah, you'll definitely feel like you're out of a Tolkien novel, and some of the places for sure.
Karissa, do you? We're gonna break down your Thanksgiving table. Do you do the mac and cheese as well as a side?
No, I actually never even heard of mac and cheese as a side for Thanksgiving until, I don't know, yesterday when you just see the things of like, you can only take away one Thanksgiving side dish or something. No, I've never done it, but I mean, I enjoy mac and cheese. So, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it at all.
See, this is interesting. I was beginning to think that it was ubiquitous across the South, but perhaps not. Now it's even more of a mystery as to where mac and cheese shows up on people's Thanksgiving table. first cousin.
Jared's gonna open up a true crime channel, tracing the colloquial appearance of mac and cheese on Thanksgiving tables.
Yeah, cut
We're
to
gonna
me.
do a deep dive, says Jared.
Yeah, when I'm winding down the music career and I'm like hosting TLC style shows or something. when people who think like us run the media, I'll do some kind of benign show about we're going to trace down America's Thanksgiving traditions and I'm going to try these different dishes in different regions. Where does mac and cheese show up? Where does it not?
Well, you've got to do that when you go on like a tour or something, when you're just going across America.
Yeah, I'll eat big on the off nights when I'm not performing. But what kind of sides do you do in your household? We could stick on the food topic while we have everyone salivating in the audience.
No, we did traditional turkey, mashed potatoes, sweet potato casserole. I did some asparagus and Brussels sprouts with a nice balsamic glaze. I did a sourdough stuffing, and I did sourdough rolls. I made an orange cranberry sauce. I'm trying to think if I'm missing anything.
Sourdough stuffing.
I feel like I am. It's like,
very good.
It's very decadent. I did everything, which I usually do, but I did everything from scratch and did like the sourdough bread the day before on Tuesday and baked it on Wednesday and let it soak in just buttery goodness for a while, and did bone broth to do to let all the bread soak after you kind of dry it out, and with some carrots and celery. And yeah, it's just that nice kind of tanginess that sourdough gives with just the rich buttery goodness of stuffing. And
on that delicious note, I think I'm going to say bye because I'm really hungry. I want to go spend time with my family and eat.
Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me on.
Thanksgiving.
Thank you guys for the wonderful community. Nice to talk to you, Carissa. Maybe we'll talk again.
It was nice meeting you.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Yes,
Happy Thanksgiving. Bye-bye.
Happy Thanksgiving. It's enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All the best to you and yours. So do you have a lot left over? Do you live near family? Like Yizz was saying, they kind of visit each other this whole week. Is it extended at all, or is it focused on the Thursday for you right now?
For us, it's the Thursday. My husband and I don't come from super large families. We're kind of trying to reinvent that with our own family. But we did have probably the best Thanksgiving this year. I hosted my largest Thanksgiving ever. It was about 15 people plus children here. And we have about 1,000 square foot home, so nothing major or anything. And it was just really fun. I guess probably the monumental moment, which I think is just important to get out there with people, was a friend that I worked with many years ago, and we've just stayed in touch. And the last year, they've really woken up to the anti-white agenda with a lot of things, and they finally have kind of crossed that threshold into some of the more uncomfortable truths that are out there, and they've been feeling very isolated and alone. And my husband was the one that actually was like, well, let's invite them. And they had such a great time, and it just really made them feel less alone out there. And I think it's important just for our folk to come together and do things like that. And then we had another like-minded couple with their children come. They drove 4 or 5 hours to come for Thanksgiving, which was really nice. And then we had my side of the family here because they live locally, and it was just a really great time. So I think it's important for us to, come together in these times, and especially those people that are just kind of awakening to everything and the anti-whites, to make them, come home and feel like they aren't alone in their thoughts. That's probably one of the worst things. I think we've all maybe been there on our journeys of awakening, and yeah.
That is monumental. It's fantastic to hear. And 15 people, that's no small feat. So my hat's off to you. I saw some of your prep on Instagram.
Yeah.
making me hungry as all this talk is now. I'm sorry about the
and also
stuffing.
Oh yeah, no, that stuffing was. I'm not really a stuffing fan, but it's a really it's really decadent. I highly recommend sourdough stuffing. But yeah, it was a lot of prep work. I did most of it on Wednesday and got everything to the point of putting it in the oven yesterday, and it just made the day better because also then I got to enjoy it and not just be solely in the kitchen all day on Thursday. So it was just mainly doing the veggies and the turkey, and just made the day really easy to do all of that. But it was fun. It was very rewarding. I tried supporting all the local farms to getting all my ingredients, and there was no packaging or pre-processed things or anything like that. So I think that's important as well. A lot of love went into everything, which is important.
I'm sure.
Did you make everything for everybody?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't do desserts. I told everybody to bring desserts. I'm like, I'm not doing desserts if I'm doing all this. but yeah.
Yeah, that's impressive. I was thinking along the same lines as Jason. I was like, I know we spoke to you back in the summer, and I forget exactly, but I think your children are probably too small to be helping yet. So I was going to ask, similar to what Jason asked about, it all fell on you. Wow. I hope those desserts that your friends brought were good.
Yeah, they were. Nobody left hungry, and yeah, it was good, and it's fun. I want my kids to remember me, in the kitchen and coming and helping and everything. And now we're just kind of transitioning into the Yule spirit over here too.
Yes.
So it's nice. I think tomorrow we're gonna go gather a lot of greenery outside and make a lot of our Yule decor. Just going outside and getting a lot of pine and evergreens and drying oranges and apples and cranberries and just bringing a lot of nature elements into the home. That's what I really like to do especially from winter and spring months to do that.
Yeah. Do you have a tree yet? Do you put it up right after Thanksgiving, or do you wait a little?
We did. We actually got a tree today, which was great. I wanted to have it done before Thanksgiving, but I didn't have time to. I wanted to really have the house all decked out for Yule, but just time, didn't get into it, but hopefully this weekend.
I just saw something that came up that our friend Bass Guitarist is in the chat, and he said that he's never heard it called stuffing until this year. Jason and Karissa, you're both from the South. He said that you'll hear it, what I know is stuffing, as called dressing, at least in some parts of the South.
Yeah.
Have either of you heard of that?
I have.
Yeah, I've heard it
Correct.
called dressing as well. I thought that was more of a Midwest thing, but maybe not. I mean, I've lived in the South my whole life, and everybody's always called it stuffing.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bass Guitarist, if you want to say at least like the region or state maybe you grew up in, if you're comfortable doing that, I'm curious. I've never heard of that until tonight. You're teaching me something new.
When I lived in Chicago, a lot of people called it dressing. So that's why I was like, maybe it's a Midwest thing, but I don't know if that's like a soda versus pop type thing.
Right. We threw in a little cornbread on the side this year, so it's a little more Southern, I would think. I'm a cornbread fan. I mean, Jason, I'm with you about got to watch the carbs, but if you
Delicious, but
if you're gonna let go a little bit on a holiday like this, the cornbread was actually a nice touch. I love anything corn with eggs, like cornmeal pancakes. Something about corn flour and eggs goes so well together.
yeah.
But
and it tastes so much like corn.
What was that?
It does.
No, I was gonna say cornbread just stays really fresh and well for a while, unlike kind of just your regular rolls that get kind of hard. And I ended up giving the rest of them to the chickens today just because they're not really that great the next day. But cornbread's really yummy.
Yeah. Is there before we bring on the final guest, we're just curious because you have a young family, if there are any traditions maybe you have being passed down, or you're starting yourself for Thanksgiving, or maybe the Yuletide coming up that you want to mention or highlight?
Thanksgiving, nothing really. Just, probably the traditional spread and just really emphasizing, the gathering of family and, the reason for the holiday and the season. Yule, I look forward to. We do a Krampus night because we follow Asatru, and we just think it's fun to. We do which we'll be doing next week. I think it's the 5th. My little one, she'll put carrots in her boots for Odin and Sleipnir to come, and it's kind of, if she's been good, then we usually leave a pair of organic cotton pajamas and a winter themed book, and if not, then there's Krampus. But I mean, of course, Krampus isn't going to come. But we do have a really nice book on Krampus. That's a children's themed book. And so last year she was a little scared of it, so maybe this year she might be a little bit more into it. But
That's
I look
cool.
forward to that tradition.
Do you do that on St. Nicholas Day on December 6th?
Yeah, the night of the 5th, 6th, yeah.
5th, 6th. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I've seen stuff about Krampus, but I haven't heard people actually like bringing it back yet.
Yeah, I know it's a lot of fun. Last year she was into it, and this year I think she'll be even more into it. She's 3 this year, so I feel like there's just so much more imagination there and everything. And we're getting things ready too for our Kindred's Yule celebration. We're gonna make beeswax candles, and we're gonna make little mason jars of stovetop potpourri. And I already have homemade vanilla, but just go through the process of wrapping all of that and making it nice, and like I said, gathering and making our Yule decorations, making wreaths and stuff like that. We did that last year, and it was a lot of fun.
Nice. Do you think she'll be helping maybe a little bit when she's 4 next Thanksgiving? I think we might be able to get her in the kitchen.
Yeah, I'm hoping. She does enjoy helping, and sometimes it's helpful and sometimes it's not, but it is instilling the good values though, and just want her to have those fond memories of us and together, and hopefully her passing down the recipes and everything onto her own children.
Oh yeah, let me just quickly ask, do you have a way of you storing and writing out the recipes? Are you organizing them in a certain way with that in mind?
Yeah, I like doing the traditional on the index card. I feel like there's something so timeless about the aged index card from grandma, in a little recipe box. It's just so, I don't know, it's just very nostalgic and kind of just a really personal touch.
It's very homey, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I know exactly what you mean with that.
Yeah. Yeah, and even now when I look at my recipes, from my mom or grandma, you recognize the handwriting, and just that brings back a lot of memories, and I want that to be passed down for sure.
Yeah, that's really building beautiful memories and inoculating your children against anti-whiteism while you're doing it. All of these holidays offer us an opportunity to do that, and to spread the practice of going free to those who are around us, so that they can go out into the world and feel moral about their place in the world, rather than having to hide in shame or to hold ideas that they know are detrimental to themselves and their children because they think it's the moral thing to do. That's a really beautiful thing. And kids will be able to look back. I guarantee if everyone out there, if you empower your children, if you inoculate them with the practice of going free, they will adopt that and stick with it, because that makes them feel special. They finally get to be wonderful beings on planet Earth. And everywhere else they look, they'll see anti-whiteism trying to tell them the opposite. So they'll gladly adopt everything that you're sharing with them. It'll become really a beautiful tradition and memories for them. And they'll be talking in decades to come about all the yeoman's work that we were doing at this time that enabled them to have the family get-togethers of not 15 but 25 or whatever it might be then, and a much stronger, much healthier people. It's really, except for maybe the demon Krampus part. Maybe that part they'll have bad memories of that, but everything else will be lovely.
It's rectified once you get to Father Christmas, once you get to the Yule Father. A little later in the month, it's like the balance, that's our European yin and yang, so it all works out in the end. But Karissa, I think we have our friend lovely Porridge is actually from Australia, but we're just highlighting the fact that we all still share this culture from around the world. So we like to have some international guests, even for our American Thanksgiving. So he is here, and we'll let you get back to your family. But we know it's a busy time for you, and we appreciate you taking a few minutes to be with us. And I know your family's going to have a beautiful time with all these things that you're preparing for the Yule season. And we send our love and hope to speak soon.
Yeah. Happy
Yes,
Thanksgiving,
thank you so
Karissa.
much. Happy Thanksgiving. Thanks for having me on.
Oh,
Happy Thanksgiving.
thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And there he is, the man, the myth, the legend. Lovely
Where's all the
Porridge.
ladies gone? They all left when I got here.
That's how it goes, huh?
That's what happens when you come late to the party.
No, well,
how you going, guys?
we have you finishing this thing out. Think of yourself as the headliner.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I got all prepared for this. I did a bit of research on Thanksgiving last night. I got all the preparations and the facts and that, but all you guys have been talking about is mac and cheese, which I know nothing about. So I'm totally unprepared now.
We have to mail you some to Australia. If anything could get in right now. Or hopefully one day sit across the table from you and actually share some of this food with you. That would be the ideal.
I have had it. I haven't had any good quality stuff, but I know a little bit about mac and cheese. I know more about mac and cheese than punctuated equilibrium or whatever Semiogogue was going on about. But
hey,
yeah,
we go all over the map here on the after party. It'll be 1 minute it's a debate between whether or not you put ketchup on mac and cheese. The next minute it's punctuated at equilibrium, the rise and fall of empire. You never know what you're going to get here, but that's how we like it, right, Jason? A little bit of everything.
Well, I did learn one thing about Thanksgiving, and that the original one, they invited some American Indians to the celebration, but you haven't done that today. You've ended up with an Australian. So I'm thinking if the American Indians have snubbed you for Thanksgiving, we can make a new tradition, inviting Aussies on to join in the feast. And I can promise you we're not going to scalp you afterwards, but we can start it from now on.
Someone in the chat was saying that he and his wife, I think, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, doing some research, and they were trying to create recipes from back and in that original Thanksgiving, at least what we know of it. And it makes sense because I guess they were by the shore. They had mussels and lobster, corn porridge, and venison as well, apparently, is what Steve is saying in the chat. So it's departed from. I don't know what the history is from when turkey really came on the scene. There has to be a story to that as to why.
Well, I think turkey's a native animal to America, isn't it?
Yeah, the turkey was most abundant, and so we hunted and lived off of them. And in fact, that's the reason why it was considered that to be the national bird, because it was
Right.
the bird the animal that we survived on. And not only that, but the turkey is actually a very intelligent animal. And you'll notice this when hunters in the hunting shows, when they hunt turkeys, they need to be fully camouflaged. They have to bathe and then cover themselves in a scent that will mask them from the turkeys. They're fully camoed because turkeys have color vision, very acute vision. And they also have to be silent because apparently turkeys also are able to hear very well. And so it's the only animal that I've ever seen hunted where the hunters look like they're in the midst of warfare. instead of being able to wear like bright orange, they have to. So it was Ben Franklin. He actually was the one that really said the national bird should be the turkey for this reason.
I remember that about the national bird. I don't remember. I feel like it has something. Why do I feel like it has something to do with Abe Lincoln? But maybe I'm confusing with something else. But that the turkey, or maybe he moved, because the actual time that we celebrate, it was moved a few times. I don't know if Franklin Roosevelt was the last president. It might have been who changed it to. It was in November, but earlier November, and then they said the third Thursday. So the date has moved a few times until we got to the modern third Thursday of November. But particularly that it became the centerpiece of the meal, the meat. for the meal. But yeah, you're reminding me, Jason, about the national bird thing. I guess we can't eat eagles, so they're like, let's do something you can't eat. We're going to switch from the turkey to the eagle. I bet you eagle meat is a little tough.
Probably.
An eagle is a lot more majestic too. It looks a lot better than a turkey as a symbol.
It looks better on a crest, right? It looks. Yeah. I don't know what it would. Imagine today, like you walk in like the office of the president or the United States Army, and it's the turkey, the
big waddle.
Well, actually, the Australian crest has an emu and a kangaroo facing each other, which might seem strange to other countries. It looks pretty normal to us, though.
Yeah, that's it strikes me as a little odd for a crest, a little awkward maybe for a crest. No offense.
So what is it like in America? Because I hear it's Thanksgiving, they're making out as though it's kind of divisive and families can't get together because they're going to fight if they have Thanksgiving. There'll be, maybe their granddaughter will kick up a fuss and that. Is that true at all, or is it only in certain areas?
I think it depends on the family. What do you say, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, the real issue is, and I think this is true across the West, and Thanksgiving just seems to be, in the United States, a time where maybe it becomes quite vociferous because it's not all about the giving and the I guess like the Christmas spirit or maybe some of the other gatherings, but when you are in the company of family and friends for these get-togethers, for the totality of our lives, our parents' lives, grandparents' lives, the anti-whites have had the moral high ground to come in and pontificate to the rest of us, and by so doing, go back to the birds, preen themselves on their villainy signaling, preen themselves on their moral self-congratulation at the expense of all of us hardworking people who have to just pay for all of these things that they self-congratulate themselves for. And so as a consequence, these environments can become quite antagonistic, and it's a major part of it. And if it's not directly spoken, or the cause or the fuse lighting of some of the tension that occurs, it is undergirding it. So it's this relative or that relative or whatever it has this sentiment, and then they're going to come in and they're going to maybe dictate about something else. And so it just draws up those ghosts of those disagreements. And that's why going free is so important, because now in those environments, we can put anti-whites in their place, that they are the ones who are immoral. And so many people have shared their stories about being able to do that at their Thanksgivings and their Christmases and the like over the past years now, because of being empowered with the concepts of going free. That is what changes the world. Go ahead.
Yeah, because you made me think also that when maybe a young teenage girl confronts her family and says, "Don't you know all the terrible things we did to these other people?" What would they say in response if they're not going free? They would probably say, "Oh, shut up. We're just enjoying some turkey. We just want to have some food." And so they have the moral low ground, and she is the one who's the moral center in that situation. So they need to come up with better responses than "we don't care, we're celebrating because we like feasting,"
Yeah, exactly. Porridge, I think what you generally heard about is just because everyone celebrates Thanksgiving, the day before Thanksgiving is the biggest travel day of the year in America. So it's just that you're sitting down at a table with maybe extended family that you're not normally with. And so the idea is that people have their different worldviews, their different politics. So there might, in the course of the evening, there might be some heated conversations, that's the kind of thing that you hear about, just generally speaking. I'm curious, in 6 months from now, when it's fall time in Australia, are any of the old European fall festival holidays make their way to Australia? Is there any kind of folksy holidays in autumn time where you are?
I don't think so, not to a large scale. Maybe some small towns might celebrate harvest somehow, but maybe we lost some of those things because they were traditionally done on a certain month, and when we came to Australia, the seasons were different, so it might have felt weird to them to change it to a different time of year. I don't know, but there are small towns who use any excuse to get together and have parades and have bake sales and all this kind of stuff, and that's nice, but not so much in Melbourne, in the big cities and that.
Yeah, I still have to wrap my head around that Christmas for you is in the summer. When it's June and it's beginning winter, July, how cold does it get where you are? And I guess you're going to do it
not very cold by European standards.
No.
Sorry, Jared?
I was saying if you're about to give a temperature, you're going to give it in Celsius, and we'd have to convert it to Fahrenheit since we do Fahrenheit here. But not very cold. Does it snow where you are?
No. Only up in the mountains it snows, but no, we'd get down to about 13 degrees during the day, and it might get down to about 8 degrees at night. So I don't know what that is in your temperature, but not bitterly cold, but
it's still above freezing. Yeah, I don't think.
Yeah, and this is in Melbourne,
40 degrees for us.
If you're out in the desert in the Northern Territory, it can get freezing at night and boiling during the day. So it's such a huge continent; you get so much varied temperature throughout it. But I think it's similar to America in a lot of ways, except that we don't have all that snow that you get. You have some great ski mountains and that. We have some good mountains, but we don't have that culture of shoveling snow from our driveways at all anywhere in Australia.
Right.
More similar to South Africa, really.
I wasn't sure about if you got snowfall in some of the southern parts on the coast in Australia.
No.
Yeah,
and that's what makes Christmas different to us too, because it's in summer, and it's often very hot during Christmas Day. So yeah, all these images of snow and these decorations people have outside, it looks quite out of place. But I like it the way it is, and the way we do our year is the school holidays at the end of the year coincide with Christmas, so the kids all get a long time off to celebrate, and then in the new year they're up into the next grade. So all this stuff seems just common sense to me, but in the rest of the world it's quite different. It's
right. Yeah, it's the middle of the school year here, but that makes sense. You get this clean break and start the next grade in the new year. That part makes more sense. When you have little decorations of Santa Claus or Father Christmas, do they like put him in shorts and a Hawaiian shirt, or does he still have the whole red get up with the cap?
Yeah, some do. Yeah, some do that kind of beach Santa thing, and snowman's made out of sand and that. But no, we've still got the traditional one.
Yeah, that
we're
is.
Jumping
funny.
ahead though. We're meant to be in Thanksgiving now.
Yeah, well, as soon as we pass Thanksgiving, we're in Christmas season. This is, to me, Jason, I don't know if you feel similarly, but now this is the first day of Christmas season. I like to give each holiday its due. October, you've heard me say this, Jason. October, Halloween, creepy stuff, that whole gothic thing. November, the harvest, preparing for Thanksgiving, the cornucopia, and you might decorate your house in themes of like oranges and browns and have pumpkins out. And now, once you pass Thanksgiving, obviously, how it goes with the commercial aspect and the big stores. They're putting Christmas trees out in October. I think that should be illegal until today. You give Thanksgiving its due, and now, today, the day after Thanksgiving, you can start putting up the Christmas tree, the wreaths, the decorations. Now we have a good month. Makes sense. You have a good month to lead up to Christmas. There's nothing like Christmas. I'm a Christmas guy. I love Christmas. And, Christmas is that one holiday, especially where it doesn't really end on Christmas. You usually keep your tree up for a couple of weeks. Definitely at least past New Year's Day. You keep those Christmas decorations up. So, Christmas has a long tail to it as well. So we have plenty of Christmas. but they just put it up because of the, they want to drive people insane with the shopping.
Yeah, well, we don't really have Halloween, but the shops are really pushing for us to celebrate it because they need something to put on the shelves before Christmas. Otherwise, Christmas would be earlier and earlier. And we don't do Thanksgiving, but there is one thing that came across from Thanksgiving, and it's not the turkey, it's not the sharing and all that stuff. It's the Black Friday sales, up to 50% off selected goods with the coupon code Black Friday. And so we did get that, but not all the good stuff, and of course. And so, yeah, we Christmas stuff is on the shelves at the moment. And yeah, that's the only thing that is not controversial about Thanksgiving, I think, in America, the sales they have. They're not going to say, oh, we're not having a sale this year, are they?
That would be very un-American, at least in the modern sense of what that term means. You need to reject the Black Friday stuff and you need to reverse it, Porridge. You need to do some work down there in Australia. Reject the Black Friday, bring in the folksy European harvest festivals. You need to reverse that down there. You are down under, after all.
I know other countries do it, and they should, because it's a Western type of celebration. And if you think about, I was thinking about how America was established, and you could probably say it started in Spain because the King and Queen Ferdinand, they funded an exploration by Columbus, who was an Italian, and he discovered America, the New World. And then you had the English Pilgrims, but they were actually living over in Holland, right, in the Netherlands. But they decided to make a settlement in America. So you have all this kind of combined effort of Western kind that led to the development of America. Spain, the Italian Columbus, the English, and the Netherlands, and
there were antecedents even of that.
What's that?
The Vikings, and then other things we might not even know about, at least in terms of standard history. But I know you're talking about the actual, what became the country.
And you have to remember too, like those pilgrims that came, they weren't warriors and they weren't engineers and architects and scientists. They were just humble religious people, but they sailed across the ocean and they had to deal with complete wilderness and those savage tribes trying to kill their families. But they just got to work, and what ended up happening, their biospirit ended up making Western civilization. And that happened in Australia, and that happens everywhere we go. So I think that gives me comfort knowing that even if everything burnt to the ground and there was nothing left, we would just start building and eventually would have something that reflects our own people somewhere where we could call home again. Because we don't have home now, do we? It's you look around, it doesn't reflect who we are. There are these ugly buildings and all that. So we will have to rebuild, even though we have our cities where they are. In our own homelands, we'll have to rebuild. But if the Pilgrims could do it, and they weren't all, advanced people in scientific fields, they were just religious people, and we can do it.
Yeah, I mean, what you spoke about, I know we've mentioned this before, but America and Australia, being that they were both founded as part of from the diaspora from Europe, the fact that you almost couldn't get to places on the globe as far apart, but we could go there, or you could come here and be with us, the way we live, and it would be familiar to you. It'd be comfortable. But we're surrounded, Jason and I, and us here in America, and you in Australia, each of us respectively are surrounded by countries that are geographically much closer. We could get to on a much shorter plane ride, but would feel like a different planet. Why is that? And that's exactly what you're saying. It's the instinct and the spirit and the mind projected into the culture. So
yeah, well, Australia is in Australasia. We're next to Indonesia and the rest of Asia above us too. But that was not at all reflected in when we started making our civilization. Of course, it would be crazy to think anything resembling Asian culture or Asian civilization would start to come out just because we moved into that location. So, but that is what we're expected to learn. You have to do mental gymnastics in order for this to work.
Yeah. Yeah, but we could always point to those examples of America and Australia and how similar, we're the same civilization as a perfect illustration of what you're talking about.
Yeah, and also even think of the culture. We have these different cultures, and the Pilgrims, I don't know what religion they were, something very strange and something that probably radically different to Christians of today.
Yeah, there were different types. Some were related to Calvinists, but there were a few different with the Pilgrims and Puritans.
But that didn't matter because of their biospirit. They ended up making Western civilization anyway. So their belief system really didn't change who they were inside and what they ended up producing.
Right. When you take it and compare to Australia, right, where it was different groups. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And I think I've heard they were actually communists to some extent when they first started, that they decided when they got to America, they would just share everything and whatever you produce, whoever needs it. And that worked for a while, but the more productive people weren't, kicking themselves into gear once they had what they needed. And so they ended up separating, giving everybody plots and then trading the goods. And that worked out better for them. So
I don't know. I don't know if it worked for a while, at least according to, you'll have to forgive me, but my source of this, just remembering a video I saw several years ago on it, was actually from Stefan Molyneux. And he talked about how we were taught as little kids in our history classes how the first few winters, 1620, 1621, the first few years were really, really difficult. And he actually breaks that down and gets under the hood a little bit more and talks about how those first few years they did what you said. They tried to share things in common. And then they switched to a system where everyone had to produce and trade, and there's more incentive to be a contributing member. And that's when things began to flourish more. It's kind of the general thumbnail sketch of what he talked about in that video.
Because it was kind of unnatural to us. Even though intellectually it might have seemed like a good idea, it didn't end up working. But my point basically was that it was a completely different political system, completely different religion, and yet it ended up creating Western civilization again. And it's the case across the board. You'd never look at like ancient Viking culture, look at their axes and say this is an ugly thing. It's beautiful to us because it was made by our people, regardless of what they believed at the time and what kind of political system they had. It's across the board. Mm-hmm. So, and that's also why we can appreciate each other's celebrations, even if we don't celebrate them ourselves.
And that's why we have you here, buddy. So that might be
I'm trying to justify myself being here.
There's no justification or rationalization for it. You're our friend, and we're celebrating a Western holiday, and of course you're invited, and we're glad that you're here. So, Jason, this is a good place to start wrapping up. I don't know if we have any comments from the chat that you want to highlight before we say goodbye.
Well, I do, and one thing that I do want to mention is that naturally, since the ear is against the door, that not all of the American Indians behaved in savage ways. That was only a few individuals, of course. And the rest of them were just most welcoming and taught us how to do everything because we were completely incompetent. At least that's what we're told now in the educational systems. And of course, CNN underscores that whenever they talk about Thanksgiving. So just remember, white man, that if it wasn't for the American Indian, you would be absolutely helpless. So let's see what we have. We do have one financial gift, and it is from the very one and only Summer Lee, financially gifting $15. Thank you so very much for that, and a little emoji heart. Thank you. And we have a question in the question or comment, I think, in the question widget by the one and only Tall Kevin. Said Semiogogue didn't just go off on a tangent; he took the whole basket of tangerines. Talking about earlier in the show tonight, and so that was great. Let me go ahead. I'll refresh over here to see if we
Hey,
make sure
Kevin,
we didn't miss anybody.
I asked Semiogogue a question, and that this is what we do. Let's say in Oliver's defense, but that was a pretty good one. Tangent, tangerines.
He took the whole tangerine.
Kevin. Well played.
Well, that's it for comments and questions and financial gifts. It's magnificent.
Anything you want to tell us? You're in the spirit of the holiday that you're grateful for.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
What am I thankful for? I'm thankful for being on this stream at Thanksgiving, and to be around other great people, and to know that that we're different from the anti-whites, because we can be very proud of our ancient ancestors, the ones who created America and created Australia, and that. And I would hate to dislike my own people. That's the most terrible thing in the world, you know. To dislike your own people is because there's a hate of yourself. So we reject that, and we're much better for it. So, and of course, I'm happy to have good health and good mental health, and be with my family and all those things as well, and be well fed. So as bad as times are, and even though we might not have the homelands in our own hands and our own destiny in our own hands, we can be thankful for so much that our ancestors have done for us, and you know, take courage from that. So yeah, I had
amen to that.
I thought of. I should have thought more about what I'm thankful for, but yeah, that just comes to mind.
Oh, it's perfectly all right. It's good to be spontaneous in the moment. Jason, anything you want to add to that?
Well, I think that it's wonderful actually. That we have Porridge come in at the end of the conversation that we've been having tonight about Thanksgiving, because it really is the holidays. Of course, the things that are not built by just laissez-faire capitalism, the things that come from us come from our biospirit, as Porridge is saying, and so it's runs through us wherever we are on planet Earth. So even though Thanksgiving is something that, you know, we have a name for it, we got a funny turkey, and maybe it's not the same. You know, Canada has their Thanksgiving. We still have the same biospirit. So the holidays they run through us. It's the same. And that's something that is truly beautiful. That's the one thing that the anti-whites, as much as they can defile who and what we are, that biospirit, as long as we keep it and protect it, there's nothing they can do to it. And we'll be brothers and sisters around planet Earth and beyond Earth. Who knows, one of these days, no matter where we go. So our holidays, our homes, our countries, our flags, they are in our hearts. They are everywhere that we travel. And we need to remember that when we see them being white erased all around us. Those are just the projections that the anti-whites are interfering with. We still have a mighty spirit inside of us that is only now, with the tools and concepts of going free, breaking free of the chains, and will, with our effort, recapture our destiny. Any final thoughts, Porridge, before we let you go?
Yeah, what I should have just said, you said it so much better than me, but we can appreciate these celebrations much more when we have no white guilt, because it's not tainted by anything. We can be proud of our ancestors, and whether they did some bad or good, they're our people, and we can see ourselves in them.
Amen to that. Mr. George?
Jason, I just want to put to Porridge, anything you want to leave us with that you're grateful for on this Thanksgiving special?
Well, I'm grateful. I'm thankful for you, good brother. I'm thankful for this entire community. I am thankful for the wonderful person that I'm dating. I'm thankful for my family. I'm thankful for the tools that our great biospirit has equipped me personally with. I'm glad that I'm thankful that so many have, with the tools that our biospirit have gifted to them, have come forward to answer the call to challenge and take down the greatest evil of our day, Antiwhiteism. So this is a great time of year to focus on the strengths. And we need to do that, especially with the anti-whites with as much power as they wield, because we can look down right in front of us, right where our own 2 feet are standing, and we can focus on taking the next step. And that's what it has to be, the next step and the next step after that. And the destiny will come. It'll be ours. And the same question to you, Mr. George. What are you thankful for?
Well, I can definitely reiterate everything that you said. All of us here, our friendship, what we've done together, this community, everything that I've been able to learn and be in this wheel of inspiration since starting this and going public a few years ago. All these projects, online things, including Porridge and I did a project, the video contest a couple years ago. Just it's been such a great story, and so many things, relationships and projects done. Of course, people in my own life, creativity and music and the ability to do that, health, clear mind and speech, at least some of the time, but getting better at wielding these gifts that we've been given and creating, not as we were talking about, even with Loralee and Oliver, even when we got a little deeper on it, and it relates to everything, your whole framework, Jason, and how you couch things is it's at some point you realize you're not just the recipient, you're not merely a recipient of other people's ideas or other people's agendas, that you have your own mind, your own awareness, and you can begin to make conscious choices about how you live your life. And even the words you say and the things, what you think, the power in that. And we're all, as I said earlier tonight as well, as long as you're here living and breathing, you're still on your adventure. So it's never over. You never say, well, I'm done.
Right.
But to realize
You broke up right there, Jared. To realize you're at least have that base state of awareness and sovereignty over your own thoughts and language, and you're living creatively, and to do that with other people, as I said, and be part of a wheel of inspiration where you're learning and being inspired all the time. These are all beautiful things. I'm grateful for this time of year, all the different times of year celebrating life. We're getting into the Yule season now. We're gonna have a lot of fun. I love this. Leave that. Those are some thoughts. I'm sure there are other things. I'm a big believer in gratitude. I try to find things big and small to focus on every day to be grateful for, but it's especially important or relevant now that we have a holiday that focuses on that. But my love to all of you, and we will see you very soon. Yes, folks. Thank you so much for everybody writing into the live chat that they are thankful for this community as well, and the great work that we're doing. We have had enormous successes and very recently with very significant content creators like Mark Dice, and there are more coming using the concepts. This is how we change the world. You can change the world in that dining room where you're having that Thanksgiving dinner. We have Christmas coming up. You'll be able to change the world there. But then we have these content creators, like I say, like Mark Dice and others, who are using the lexicon, and increasingly so. And because it is the curative contagion, because it is exactly what we have developed it and continue to develop it to be, we are the ones changing the world. So be thankful for yourself and the hard work that you are doing to bring that new world, that new vision into focus. Because if we're not doing it, it's not getting done. Big thank you to everybody who was here today commenting, and those who were on the wall just being a flower and participating. We love you too. Big thank you to Naderific for moderating over the course of the stream, and to all of our guests, a big thank you. Of course, the most thanks to the lovely Porridge, who's with us here at the tail end, to save the best for last. With you look at the comments, the kind of comments that Porridge gives, and I've had more than a handful of people read Porridge's comments in the threads and write me and say, that Porridge guy is some kind of genius. I completely concur. But folks, it's been marvelous. And happy Thanksgiving to every single one of you. And we look forward to seeing you all again next time.